Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Rioch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil since 2009. I'm Tom Rioch, an American living in Brazil for many years and known as the King of Networking, and talking from my studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. Today's guests back with us again are Marcelo Moraes. He's a fellow member of the Future Advisory Board at the Commercial and Industrial Association of Campinas. Marcelo is a Brazilian, a digital content strategist, marketing executive, and specialist in business transformation. Marcelo is talking to us from his office in Toronto, Canada. Marcelo is a participant at the Humber College Professional and Continuing Education School of Media Studies and Information Technology. So hello, Marcelo, and welcome back to Talk to Brazil.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me again. It's great to talk to you and to your listeners. And by the way, I'd like to say hello to all your listeners too.
Very good. And I also have with us Vanessa Puerta. Vanessa Puerta is Brazilian, living in Brazil. She's an organizational communication and intercultural consultant and joins us from São Paulo. Vanessa has been on both Talk to Brazil podcast and BBN Brazil in Portuguese. So with that, Vanessa, hello and welcome back.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Marcelo. Thank you again for this opportunity. It's great to talk and keep the conversation with you.
It's good to have both of you because today we're going to be talking about reputation building, and specifically reputation building for executives and companies. And on previous podcasts, we have touched on this in a number of different ways. But today I want to talk about podcasts and how they serve for reputation building. So I want to start off with you, Vanessa, and we're talking about intercultural communication and for professionals and businesses. What do you think about podcasting as a form of reputation building?
Well, I think podcast is a new, well, not new, but modern tool to support and to help executives and companies to build their reputation, as it's a channel with easy broadcasting. You can listen to a podcast everywhere, driving, at the gym, doing other things. So it reaches many people, and you can tell your story. Not just tell things you do, but you tell your story and you tell how you do things more than things you do. So it's a way that you can get closer to your audience. You can, this, I think. You can get closer because you are more exposed, and you can tell about feelings, about your hobbies, about yourself, the person. It shows the person, not only the executive image.
So it's not just like you just said, it's just not the statistics about a company, it's just not the marketing of the company, right?
No. You can tell stories of people in your company, stories on how your company works. Now in this era of COVID, you can tell the actions that your company is doing to support your people internally, to support home office, or if you are a supermarket, actions that you are taking to so your customers are safer in your stores. Or in my case, that I work also with construction, how we supported our teams in being safe in the construction field. How to get more cleanliness. They don't work any longer in groups. They work individually, so far from each other. Before they used the masks in some activities. Now they use the masks all the time, different kinds of masks, because before it was powder masks and now it's masks, health masks, right, or other kinds of masks. So with podcasts, you can show different kinds of content, but always aligned with your value proposition. So that is an important point. To build your reputation and to build your identity, either organizational identity or your personal identity, you need to all your content needs to be aligned to the actions. Yes, not invent content, but you need to walk the talk. So your contents need to be aligned to who you really are. A company or a person.
You walk the talk, and since you have been, I've had you on a number of occasions. You've been interviewed both on BBN Brazil in Portuguese and Talk to Brazil in English. What you have done, you've taken those podcasts and place them in your LinkedIn profile, and you use that to multiply and promote yourself as a professional. For Marcelo, you've done the same thing. What's your feeling about that? Because you also, you've been interviewed. You get the point of view from Brazil in terms of advancement of content generation. Now you have a better feeling what's happening out in the world, more specifically in Canada.
Great. First of all, hello, Vanessa. It's great, talking to you and to Tom. I pretty much agree with everything Vanessa has shared with us so far, all the benefits of podcasts. But I'd just like to, take some steps back and talk a little bit about reputation. Reputation naturally is nothing new to everybody. We have been dealing with this since the old ages, or whatever you call it. What has changed in the latest maybe 10 years, 15 years is how we do that. And because of all the technology that surrounds us, on a daily basis, we have to evolve, and we have to understand the importance of new and different tools, social media, and also among them podcasts. And podcasts really play an important role for that. Again, Vanessa has covered different advantages of podcasts, and I'd like to add some other points to that. More specifically to the audience, one of the facts that are very related to podcasts are about how people are loyal to the podcasts they like, how they really follow some specific content creators or some specific topics. And that means a lot if you want to build your audience related to, your personal brand or related to a specific industry. You have plenty of podcasts that can help you to target that audience. And that's amazing for me. And naturally, there are other benefits, such as the data that you can have based on the interactions that you have with your audience, comments, downloads, who is listening to what you're saying. And this is not specific to podcasts, relates to digital media in general, but those advantages make podcasts an important tool for those brands, companies, and people that really want to build their reputation or sharpen their reputation. And talking specifically about Canada, these podcasts are a big thing in Canada, just like in the US too. Again, because of everything we have talked about, people listen to podcasts a lot. Canada is much about it. And I think maybe this is a little bit different from Brazil. They do understand in Canada how important this tool is for the purposes we have been talking about.
And one of the things I sent both of you, and I'll be posting that on the site, 2 articles that I saw. One was 7 ways having a podcast benefits your brand. And the other is 10 reasons why you need to add podcasts to your content strategy. And in this last article, which is from last year, actually, in 2019, what it shows, one of the things that it shows is what you said, podcasts have low competition. And what they show in this article that says, while there are around 80 million Facebook business pages, there's only 700,000 podcasts airing. And so that tends to bring more focus on your message and helps make it less diluted. And you, Marcel, as a marketing expert, how do you see that? Is that low competition a plus factor?
Yes, definitely. I wouldn't say it's low competition, probably lower than on social media based on the numbers you have shared. But that's a reality. So you have less content, less podcasts than you have content on other social media such as Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and that's a different. But I also would like to. I mean, podcasts for me, they're all about. They are a product itself. They are. You have a podcast about like talking to Brazil, or any other subject specifically. They are a product. So if you like them, you just follow that content. Right. You can gather their content on social media. Social media for me, they are platforms. Like they are where you spread your content. Like you publish content on social media specifically, but you also use them to promote podcasts such as Talk to Brazil. So they have some similarities, but they are not the same, let's say, animal. So and you really have to understand those differences.
But back to what Vanessa you said, in terms of being innovative, being modern, and podcasts are growing in popularity, and part of that is because they're new. They are modern. They're up to date. There's something different. What do you think on that topic?
Yes, I think people who are content developers, the person responsible for the podcast, they need to be very informative. They need to be aware of the news and sharing new content all the time. So they need to be very well informed and very well informed of trends in their areas of actuation. So it's important to be to have their loyal listeners, as we said. They need to be top speakers on their content. Right. And I think Marcelo can tell more about this, because they need to be in the top to build their reputation as experts in their area. They need to know everything and trends. People want to be ahead. They want to think ahead and plan ahead. So they want to know before what is going to happen next.
Right. Well, what do you feel? Because you've posted, I mentioned, you posted the podcast that you've been part of here on Talk to Brazil and BBN Brazil. You've posted them on LinkedIn. What's your experience of the feedback that you've gotten?
Well, people who listened to it, they said it is great to know more about yourself, about what you do, but the way you speak about things, because it's different when we write and when we speak. When we write, we tend to be more technical and look more for for nice words and get everything arranged. When we talk, it's more personally. We get, as I said before, we get closer to the audience. So that's something important. In the practical way, it's good to mention that if we are writing a text and someone is reading, a comma or any letter, anything any mistake that you commit, you are exposed. And people, when you are talking, people are listening and they are paying attention more to the content, not to the form. Right. So I think that's an important point. And if you write, then it takes you more time, and you write and then you revise and rewrite. And you don't send the real message that you want to share with your audience.
And how about you, Marcelo? What was your feedback from persons who heard you?
It's a great feedback. And again, talking about like distributions, this is one of the other advantages of like podcasts. Like I have shared our conversations using LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and also WhatsApp. So I reach out to people that I really think they would benefit, or they would like to hear what I have to talk about with specific message, so very targeted. And the feedback is amazing. People listen to what you have to talk. As you were talking to someone that relates to that specific subject, you engage in meaningful conversations. So as Vanessa said, like, it's more natural to have a conversation, and it's also a great start to starting up another conversation based on the podcast, and also to building your reputation as you share what you think, your skills, your experiences. So the feedback was amazing using all of the tools, but I'd like to highlight WhatsApp when you really target people that relates to the topic you're talking about.
I mean, that's one of the things in one of the articles that came out, that 69% of podcast listeners are on their mobile devices. And you're mentioning what's up, and that's form when you can really, you get to the individual. And as you send a WhatsApp link for your podcast, they generally click on it and listen to it or download it, which is the other advantage. They don't have to consume it right away. They can download and listen later, and even in parts.
True, totally true.
What were your listeners, was your feedback? Were people surprised to hear you? Do they think it was something new, something innovative, as Vanessa said?
Well, I think the feedback...
Or is that what they expect from you? Because you are a leader, you are innovative, you are creative.
Yeah, I think the most important feedback was about, starting conversations about, topics we were discussing. Mm-hmm. Less, surprise and more, well, that's nice. I'd like to talk about this. As one of the, examples, I was talking to this friend of mine. He's a director of Hero Consumers Brazil. And we were talking about brands. We were talking about naked brands. And he loved the podcast. He agreed with some of the things that I have talked about. And he replied the podcast to friends in Italy. So again, this is the way things happen today, and we kept talking about it for like maybe a couple of days. So this is how things happen. And I'm a huge fan of great products. So, and podcasts can be great products. If you have someone that, is able to host a conversation, to, get, valuable and interesting conversation or information from people like you do, Tom. And if you talk about interesting subjects and then if you move forward with that, richness of a product to a targeted audience, you will have success. This is this is how it has been happening for 100 years. So good product, in this case, it's good content, talking to the right people. And this is, halfway to having a huge success. More than halfway, to be frank.
Well, that's a good point to both of you, that you could use the link to a podcast, really, like you said, to create a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
sure.
That's what I've been doing, apparently, Vanessa, at the time.
So really, you're sending somebody an envelope. When they open it, then they're surprised.
I think that it's a good point, because it sounds natural and it sounds like we were starting a conversation, and you really are. But there is a lot behind it, behind the scenes, because there are equipments, there are programs, and you have to learn before what you are going to talk about to be a real good information. So it is natural. It seems natural, but there are a lot of preparation, and that's not for everyone, because we need to use people's time. You are developing your brand. You are spreading content that needs to be relevant to people. So you need to understand that it seems to be simple, like everyone who has a cell phone and thinks they can be photographers, but it's not the same thing.
That's true. But there's an important aspect with podcasting that I think sometimes, I'm not saying it's overlooked, people may not be aware of, because right now we're in the situation where everybody's doing lives, either on Instagram or LinkedIn, and it seems that's the way of multiplying content very quickly. But there's the question of SEO, is there a benefit of SEO from lives? And I think that's a discussion. But what we do know, the podcast ranks very highly in Google. So when a person uses that for reputation building, you're certain that podcast will help you in your SEO, either for yourself professionally or for your company or for your brand. Do you see it that way, Marcelo?
Yeah, totally. Most popular search engines, such as Google, they've been developing specific tools to get our relevant podcasts, relevant content. And again, it is content, and they see content as something valuable. So they, let's say, prioritize that in their, let's say, what's the name again? Their engine optimization tools. So that really helps when you have podcasts as one key to develop your, brand strategy or your reputation strategy. It is an important point to be mentioned to Tom.
Yeah, and Vanessa, I think in our podcast in Portuguese on BBN, you mentioned that when we're talking about the lives, you said there's just so much content being generated, but you really weren't impacted by it. But speaking of SEO, lives don't really lead to SEO, do they?
No, because after 24 hours, they just disappear. Yeah, they are not storage anywhere. And podcasts, they are there. You can listen again, or you can listen in parts, as you just mentioned. And it's content that is there for future accessing. And lives don't get any indexation in SEO. And there are a lot of content, especially now, and you need to select what we are going to consume. So that's important. If you like a podcast, then you follow more. I think that's why podcast listeners are loyal.
And Marcelo, do you feel this excess of lives right now?
Kind of, but I totally understand it. We were talking about it before, like starting the program, the podcast itself. But, we all of a sudden, millions of people were actually billions of people worldwide. We were, our freedom was like sort of taken away. We can't leave our houses. We're stuck. We can't go to concerts. We can't go to the movies. So those like this lives, like webinars or concerts or whatever it is, they kind of like it was the first solution that we had, and it's totally great. So yes, we have lots of live content now, but I think it's for a good reason why we can't have our lives back to normal. So, but they, as Vanessa said, they have like different goals. It's great to have the possibility of watching all those live that are available now, but they do not like they're way different from like products or media like podcasts. They have different like approaches, as we have talked, like specific content for a specific audience that you can like hear whenever you want to on the go using your mobile phone. So different animals, way different animals in this case.
But also talking about reputation, many times people say you only value your reputation when you lose it. Is that part of what's happening, what some people see happening with so many lives, that they seem to be more amateur in their format? Do you think it strengthens someone's reputation versus a podcast?
It might. I don't have any specific example in my mind. It's a really tricky subject because I was watching a live from Ivete Sangalo probably 1 month ago with my wife. She loves Ivete Sangalo and my kids, and Ivete was singing wearing her pajamas. Mm-hmm. In her kitchen.
I think I saw that myself. I saw that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I just can't remember if I there was a brand sponsoring this live, but it was cool actually. I mean, it shows like it's very relatable. I think first thing is Yvette is like stuck in her home, in her mansion, to be frank, just like we are. There's a difference between a normal person and a mansion where Yvette lives. But I mean, it's more relatable to see things like more amateur, as you said. I mean, it's a really tricky situation. I think people are more concerned now in having like brands as partners to bring them content, or to have artists to spend their times entertaining us or supporting a cause. So I see it's a way more in a positive way than in a negative way, though I don't have any data to back me up.
No, but I would guess that Yvette sold a lot of pajamas.
If the stores are open,
well, e-commerce don't have to be open. They
get
online, true. Send them, buy them.
True.
But I think that, no, in that sense, and those types, when we're talking about entertainment, music, other things, without a doubt, they pervade a lot of good feeling. And obviously, live performers, like you said, and everybody else, they were probably most impacted because they just can't be out. You can't have gatherings with people. So they had to, and then very quickly, look to that. But I'm sure as soon as they can get out and have live performances again, that would be their preference. But Vanessa, from your point of view in terms of communication, corporate and executive CEOs, like you said, these messages, a live could be tactical and maybe a podcast would be more strategic. Do you see it that way?
Yes, it can be really strategic if your content heads to your strategy, to your value proposition, and to real actions that your company is taking. So if you drive your content management to your strategy, it can be really great to your image and to your reputation. But if you tell nice things in the podcast and your team is unhappy, people in their home office, things are not working fine, and your customer is not satisfied, then no strategy, no communication will work. You need to be real to what your company is really doing, to what you're delivering to your customers and the experience that your employees are having at work.
Well, too, and back to your experience in organizational communication, communication from an organization isn't just one thing. It isn't one tool, right? I imagine you suggest to companies that they have to have a toolbox full of tools to be able to communicate. And one of them could be lives, the other could be podcast, amongst other things. So just having one is not enough, but having something that does tend to be modern and innovative could also be an attraction. It's a tool I would think you would need in your toolbox.
Sure. You need to understand who your audience is. Mm-hmm. So if you are a big company, let's not think about this pandemic time, but regular time or the new normal that will come. You have people in the office, they can have coffee and they can watch the TV, the corporate TV channel. Mm-hmm. So things can be going there and they can have their coffee, they talk, they can see them, the company's magazine, all this. That will be fine. Or internet or emails, mm-hmm. because they will be sitting at their desks. But if you have a team of salespeople, for example, that are all over the country, let's talk about Brazil. They are in the Northeast, the North, the South, and they are moving from client to client. They are driving. How can they read their magazines? How can they are not having access to the beautiful babies that were born that are showing on the TV. So how they are getting information? If you send through the post office their magazines, how long it will take? How much it will cost. Right. So if you have podcasts, they can listen to it in the radio or while they are driving. Even your team, your local team that are in the office, they can listen to the podcast while they are going and coming in public transportation or driving. So the way you are reaching, or you can also send the same message in different ways, mm-hmm. depending on the channel and platform that you are using. If you talk to, for example, shop floor, you have the news on the wall, mm-hmm. some highlights. But they don't have access to computers or to emails. They're on shop floor. So if you have the podcast to tell them more about discharge or safety, anything, so you can be more in there. You can be closer to them. You can approach our communication depending on the public. So just to mention, salespeople or shop floor. There are many ways of adapting your content and your communication depending on the public you have. Communication is not only one channel, only one message. You have to there are things that are really important. You need to be reinforcing all the time.
And that lends to one of the points mentioned in the article of a mobile-friendly content option. And I think that's the key of what you just said, of being able to have the access. And when we're talking about the access, and that is, again, on the mobile devices. So that lends very well to what you just said. Well, I want to thank both of you. We're coming to the end of our time again. But I think this topic of reputation building, of different tools that we can put in our toolbox, we'll be back and we'll be talking more about that in the future. So I want to thank you first, Marcelo, for being with us again from Canada. Thank you.
My pleasure, Tom. Again, it was a pleasure talking to you, talking to Vanessa. It was a pleasure sharing my thoughts with your audience. Count on me whenever you think I can, be of use.
And that's probably weekly. Okay.
All right.
And to you too, Vanessa, thanks for being part again of and talking about organizational communication and intercultural communication.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Marcelo. It's always great to keep the conversation and supporting companies and executives, especially now in these tough times we're facing. But it's always great to share what we know and learn more from you and your partners.
Very good. And I'd like to thank our listeners too for sharing. And I hope you can advise all of you can find more about Vanessa and Marcelo on LinkedIn, and also on our site, which is talktobrazil.com. I'd like to thank our audience and sponsors, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. More about them on their site, which is focusmi.com. Remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Rioch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.